Neither fighter nor bomber, but the OV-10 Bronco changed the face of war for decades to come.
The YOV-10D Night Observation Gunship System, NODS, was developed in response to a prime operational requirement identified by the
At a time when the skies were dominated by jets, the US Marine Corps announced new requirements. They wanted the benefits of a jet enclosed in a close air support aircraft, something that could give them the best of both worlds. A tall order, but the OV-10 rose to the occasion. The Pentagon gave it up, but this bird came back stronger. Aircraft manufacturing in the 1900s was motivated by one thing: war. The focus was almost always on bigger and more powerful jets. The military, Air Force, and the Marines were all determined to build a stronger offense rather than a defense. But then, cut to the 1950s, and the Marine Corps had a moment to think about air defense after the events of the Second World War. Now they wanted more. They put out a requirement for a rugged, short takeoff and landing aircraft that could operate in remote areas, support counterinsurgency missions, and provide close air support. What is close air support?
Right now, he's fucking crouching. Oh, shit.
Oh my God.
Holy shit. Blood sport everywhere.
Do you see?
Briefly, it's a military tactic where aircraft provide direct support to ground troops engaged in combat, typically by attacking enemy forces that are in close proximity to friendly units. The goal is to assist ground forces by neutralizing or destroying enemy positions, vehicles, or personnel that pose an immediate threat. CAS missions are especially important when ground units are outnumbered or advancing. These missions require precision and coordination between pilots and ground controllers to avoid friendly fire. Pilots rely on real-time communication with air controllers or joint terminal attack controllers to help identify the aircraft's target. An example of one of the best CAS fixed-wing aircraft in the Marine Corps arsenal? None other than the North American Rockwell OV-10 Bronco, simply the Bronco. W.H. Beckett and Colonel K.P. Rice of the Marine Corps were the brains behind the Bronco. They met at the Naval Air Weapons Station in California, where they discussed the Marines' requirements for CAS aircraft. It just happened to be a happy accident that the two lived close enough to one another to get started on the Bronco in each other's garages. That's right, a military aircraft that found its origins in a garage. Beckett and Rice's work attracted the attention of locals, and soon enough the designers found themselves making pamphlets educating everyone in military-grade aircraft. People around them were impressed, yes, but Beckett and Rice needed someone else to validate their work a lot more desperately: the Marines. Work on the Bronco was driven by the need for a specialized aircraft to support counterinsurgency during the Cold War, particularly as US involvement in Southeast Asia deepened. The aircraft was designed to take off from simple road runways near the front lines. It needed to fly slowly or at medium speeds and stay in the air longer than jets. Turboprop engines gave it better power than old piston ones. Weapons were mounted in the center for easier aiming, and it used low-recoil explosive guns instead of heavier rockets or cannons. All features that complied with the Light Armed Reconnaissance Aircraft program that sought an aircraft that could perform multiple roles. The closest the military had to such an aircraft back then was the Cessna 01 Bird Dog and the 02 Skymaster. But in 1963, these aircraft became obsolete because they weren't good enough for jungle fighting. That was what the Marines wanted, something with speed and load-bearing capacity. Submissions were open, and the Marine Corps announced its requirements: everything we just said, plus a twin-engine, two-man aircraft that could carry at least 2,400 pounds. From the Grumman Model 134R to the OV-1 Mohawk, and from the Goodyear GA-39 to the Convair Model 48 Charger, A total of 11 submissions were made, but the Marines ultimately decided to go with the underdog in this case, the North American Aviation Bronco. The design still wasn't perfect, and Beckett and Rice had to compromise on a few design aspects before the first order came in. Remember how they wanted the Bronco to be able to take off from roads over runways? That wasn't possible anymore because the order was for the same aircraft with a larger wingspan. That being said, the Bronco was revolutionary in the fact that it provided CAS in a way that no other jet could. Maybe because it wasn't a jet in the first place. The OV-10 Bronco was built with a unique layout, a central fuselage for the pilots and cargo and two booms housing the engines. Its standout feature is the twin-boom design connected by a horizontal tail stabilizer. The setup helped it take off and land on short or rough runways without the need for special launch or landing gear. It was easy to repair with basic tools and didn't need ground equipment to start the engines. In a pinch, it could even run on car fuel. Loitering has always been a prime focus when it comes to a CAS aircraft and probably the last thing to consider when developing a jet. The Bronco could handle air conditioning well and stay up for over 5 hours with extra fuel tanks. Its cockpit gave pilots great visibility thanks to a wide wraparound canopy. It also had custom ejection seats, and with the second seat removed, it could carry cargo, paratroopers or medical patients. Underneath the plane were stub wings called sponsons, which reduced drag and carried weapons like machine guns, bombs, and rocket pods. On the other hand, we have the A4 Skyhawk II. This single-engine jet was designed primarily for attack missions, an extension of an aircraft carrier. What comes to your mind when you hear jet? Yep. The Skyhawk II was faster, more streamlined, and built for delivering heavier ordnance at higher speeds, including but not limited to nuclear weapons.
For a catapult takeoff.
The Skyhawk was widely used in high-threat environments where speed was essential, while the Bronco excelled in counterinsurgency operations and missions requiring precision support close to ground troops. Ultimately, the two aircraft complemented each other in different ways. The Skyhawk dominated in jet-powered attack missions, while the Bronco handled low-speed, close-in battlefield duties that jets couldn't perform as effectively. Not-so-fun fact, 81 OV-10 Broncos were ultimately lost to all causes during the course of the Vietnam War, with the Air Force losing 64, the Navy 7, and the Marines 10. The Bronco saw its heyday during the Vietnam War, where it played a unique and valuable role in missions that required slower and more maneuverable aircraft with excellent visibility. Simply, the Bronco trifecta. Its rugged build and short takeoff and landing capabilities made it perfect for Vietnam's rough terrain.
Near the west end of the demilitarized zone, 8 F-100 crews of the 6th 12th Tactical Fighter Squadron attack a large concentration of enemy storage bunkers.
The Bronco was used by all three divisions during the Vietnam War: the U.S. Marine Corps, Air Force, and Navy. The Marines were the first to adopt the Bronco, using it in missions like air support, reconnaissance, and guiding airstrikes. Later, the Marines upgraded some Broncos with night vision and targeting systems. The Air Force started flying Broncos in Vietnam in 1968 during Operation Combat Bronco, using them to guide airstrikes and scout for ground troops. Operation Combat Bronco even included ejecting chemical spray planes.
If supplies must be moved from point to point, the OB-10 can carry up to 3,200 pounds. Airdrop of resupply loads has been demonstrated.
Over time, the Air Force armed the OV-10 with machine guns and rockets, making it a more versatile combat tool. Yes, 81 Broncos were lost during the war, but they went down fighting after having proved themselves to be valuable assets. Even decades later, the aircraft was briefly brought back for missions in Iraq and Syria, showing just how massive a legacy they'd carved for themselves.
Da auf dem Flugplatz sind zu zeigen. Achtet Sie speziell auf die Treibwerse von der Propellerturbine. Da wird das Flugzeug sehr kurz.
We just covered all the reasons why the Bronco was a hit, but you probably haven't heard about the legendary Cass aircraft for a while. Why is that? Well, maybe because the Pentagon retired the OV-10 Bronco because of changing military needs. Officially, it was that, but unofficially, the Pentagon feared that the Bronco just wasn't modern enough for modern-day warfare. Yes, it was an asset during the Vietnam War and could be leveraged in case of war with the former Soviet Union, but it was hard to modify the Bronco with the latest tech. This isn't to suggest that North American Rockwell didn't modify the Bronco. There were several modifications over the years and some international variants as well, but the Pentagon had made up its mind. By the late 1980s and early 1990s, the US Air Force and Marine Corps began replacing the OV-10 with more modern aircraft like the OA-10A and FA-18D, which could handle both ground attack and FAC roles with better survivability, speed, and sensor systems. Additionally, maintaining a small, aging fleet like the OV-10 became expensive and inefficient. Training pilots and mechanics for just one limited-use aircraft type no longer made sense. The Bronco did see a resurgence, though, in 2015. During the war in Iraq and Syria, the OV-10 made a comeback when the Pentagon approved funding to evaluate whether a light, older aircraft like the Bronco could provide effective close air support in modern conflicts at a lower cost. Two upgraded OV-10G Plus Broncos, previously used by NASA and the State Department, were modified with modern avionics, new four-bladed propellers, and advanced sensors. Altogether, this was known as Operation Combat Dragon 2. Over 82 days, the two Broncos flew more than 120 combat sorties. Still, the Pentagon ultimately decided that reactivating it long-term just wasn't worth the cost. The OV-10 Bronco rose to the occasion at a time when it was needed, and then some, during the Vietnam War. Its versatility made it a heavy hitter in a sky dominated by jets, but it was ultimately no match for the big guy, the US Pentagon. Still, the Bronco has established an unmatched legacy for itself, and that's all that matters, right? See you next time.